What's up you guys, I'm Dan, this is Frugal Not Cheap, and today we'll look at the question, how much car can I afford? I've been thinking about this topic a lot because I got in an accident early May, and for a weekend there I thought that my car was totaled, and so I was going to have a certain payout and I was going to be using that in order to buy a car. So of course I went through my usual car buying decisions. You can see a little bit about my journey about that in my last video, but today really I want to talk more generally in terms of how I think about the purchase of a vehicle. So I think the first thing is to explain what the question means to me. So the question, how much car can I afford, has absolutely nothing to do with car payments, at least not directly, because in my view, car payments are dumb. Car payment is a moronic idea that car salespeople use in order to get you to buy a car that's more expensive than you can actually afford. It's not the monthly payment that matters, it's how expensive the car is that matters. Now, of course, these two things are going to be correlated, but you get the idea. I could stretch out the loan length in order to be able to afford a 3 Series BMW, meaning that I could achieve the same payment as I could get buying a more appropriate car for my income, say like a Toyota Corolla or a Camry. But regardless of those two monthly payments being equal, of course, in the end, the Beamer is going to be much more expensive than the Corolla or the Camry. Alright, so how much would I personally spend on a car? Well, I think somewhere like 3 to 4 months salary seems like a pretty reasonable starting point. For someone that makes the median personal income of $45,000 a year, that's going to be a little bit trickier. At the low end, we're talking about $11,500. But on the high end, it's a bit more doable. We're talking about $15,000. Now, obviously, as the income goes up, using this rule of thumb gives you a lot more room to work with. Where if you're making $100,000, then you're looking at a $25,000 to $33,000 car. For my previous car, not the Tesla, but the 2010 Acura TSX that I had, I did stretch a little bit. My income was lower at that time, but I spent about 6 months salary, 5 to 6 months salary at the time on the car, but I did keep it for 11 years and I really don't regret it. It was great. But of course that was a 2010 car that I bought in 2012 used for $25,600, whereas new, I think that car started at around $33,000. So point being, if you're thinking that getting a new car for $15K is pretty darn near impossible, then yeah, I'm absolutely with you. And that brings us to the next topic, which is would I buy used or new? And so I think you can tell obviously that I prefer to buy used cars for one big word, and that is depreciation. Now look, the market got kind of all crazy during COVID and with the supply crunch and the lack of semiconductors. But things are starting to normalize, and under normal circumstances, cars tend to depreciate by 40 to 50% within their first 5 years. And of course, that depreciation curve is steepest right at the beginning. In order to avoid that rapid loss of value in an asset, I prefer to buy used cars that are very reliable, so that even though, yeah, when it's brand new, you get the warranty, but if it's a very reliable car, like a Toyota or a Honda or something like that, it's pretty unlikely you're even going to need to use that warranty at that time. And then at the same time, when you buy used, say 3, 4, 5 years later, then a lot of those initial defects have been fixed by the original owner using that warranty. And so, then the car's in pretty good nick when you get it. That was the case for my 2010 TSX. It was absolutely fantastic the whole time that I owned it. And during the recent weekend where I thought my car was totaled and I had $34,700 to work with, this is exactly what I did. I was looking at this 5-year-old sweet spot. So I was looking at a 2018 Tesla Model S 75D. So it's basically my car, but a year newer with all-wheel drive. Also had the premium audio that comes standard, and then air suspension, which also became standard. And then this one had a really cool white interior trim. It is vinyl, not leather. They made a switch to between 17 and 18 to vinyl, and then also the carbon fiber instead of wood trim. So it's a pretty cool car, but ended up not working out. One, because the dealership was really shady, and then second, because then I found out my car wasn't totaled after all. Now, all this said about buying a used car, would it be the worst thing in the world to, buy a new car that's affordable and then keep it for 15 years? No, right? Like, we're going to have to eat that depreciation, but if we keep it long enough, then we can get that cost per use down quite a bit, and it can be a reasonable thing to do as well. But we shouldn't fool ourselves in thinking that that's going to be cheaper. So what would I do if I were making the median income of $45,000? Well, I would buy a 5-year-old used car for between $15,000 and $20,000. Make sure it's a very reliable make and keep it for a long time. It can be tempting to think that, looking at the used car market, I could buy these, really cool cars for, whatever X amount of money. The trap there, of course, is that if anything goes wrong with them, like if I get an exotic car, then those repairs are going to be very, very costly, and they're rapidly going to make this into a poor financial decision because I bought a car that my income really isn't able to support. So I did a quick search on AutoTrader for what kind of cars we could look at within this budget, and I found a couple of really practical cars. We've got a 2019 Honda Fit. This is a hatchback, very practical car with 57,000 miles. And it's going for $16,500. Then I also found a 2019 Honda CR-V, and this one's going for sort of the top range of our budget at $20K. But both of these are very reliable and practical vehicles. Now I do want to segue here and say that, look, these are internal combustion engine cars. They're regular gasoline cars. And of course, I'm a huge proponent of electric vehicles. And so right now, if you live in certain states, it's actually pretty tempting to look at a new EV, a new Tesla Model 3, for instance, because there's a $7,500 federal tax credit. So you do need to have a tax liability of at least $7,500 in order to get that back when you file. But then on top of that, if you're in states like Colorado or California, especially where there's a huge incentive of $7,500 again, so we're talking $15K total, then that brings the cost of the cheapest Model 3, which is the standard range rear-wheel drive, down to just a hair above $25,000, and that's a steal. That's pretty crazy. So if I lived in California and I qualified for both of those rebates, that would be a pretty tempting thing to do. We don't have that here in Texas, so what are you going to do? And anyway, I just have to be patient. Eventually, my own car, which is wonderful, is going to end up being repaired. Okay, and then the last topic I think should be about going back to paying for the car. And we've already talked about how the car payment is, can be a trap. It's really not something to focus on. Obviously, it needs to be able to fit into our budget and to cash flow it, right? But there are two big considerations here to think about. So one is that actually, if you're prepared to pay cash, oftentimes you'll find that dealerships now are not impressed or care about that anymore because they get a kickback through loan generation. So it's actually in their interests for you to finance the car. So you could do that, just put a lot down and then pay off the loan right away, as long as you make sure there's no kind of balloon payments or early payment penalties or anything like that structured into the loan. The standard ones shouldn't have anything like that. So that's what I would do, is say put 25% down, then just pay off the loan before really any interest can accrue, and that's that. And then of course they'll get their loan origination thing, and they'll be more lenient on the price, have more wiggle room on the price, let's say, rather than saying that you're paying cash, which again they don't care about so much. And then the other option, of course, is do we want to pay off that loan quickly or not? Now, right now, of course, interest rates are much, much higher. I think I saw a thing on the web of something like a 9% interest rate on a used car. I don't know what I would get. I haven't really looked into applying for one, but I imagine probably somewhere around 6.5%, something like that. And at that rate, I think it makes sense to pay off, to get a guaranteed 6.5% return. If it was more like 7 or 8, then for sure, right? Versus the potential return in the markets. However, if interest rates were at like 2%, where the real interest rate after inflation is basically 0, then probably in my position, what I would do is just pay it off over time and then invest instead. So what I mean by that is, let's say the car is, $40,000, and I've got the $40,000, then instead of paying off the loan, I'll invest that $40,000 and then cash flow the monthly payments. So hopefully that makes sense to you. And that's how we're able to earn the return on the investments over time, which should be a much higher expected value than, say, the 2% interest rate. And then if I'm doing that, then loan length is another consideration to talk about. And so, somewhere like, 4 years or so seems like a decent spot. Those 8-year, 7-year things are kind of crazy to me. I don't know about all that. So I think if we have to stretch out that far in order to fit into our budget, then definitely we haven't been following these kinds of rules of thumb. And also it's just too expensive of a vehicle for my budget and my situation. That's how I think about it. Hopefully you find that helpful. If you did, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.